Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. For this week's video, I'm going to be making something that has been on my list for a while, and I'm going to be using fabric that has been in my stash for a very long time. Some of you may be familiar with the brand Beaten Linen. They, I believe, are Canadian-based and kind of a slow fashion brand that used to sell garments as well as fabric, and I think their business model has shifted a little bit, and now they're selling home sewing patterns. And when they were kind of closing down the fabric sales part of their business, I snagged some of their linen, and it is super high quality. It's really soft and it drapes beautifully, and I'm very excited to be using this linen. I have made a shirt out of this linen before, so I know that it washes and wears beautifully, but I have enough fabric left over to make another project or two, and that's what I'm doing today. Here is the fabric. It's this lovely sort of sky blue color. It's a 5.5 ounce linen, and as I said, it's incredibly soft. And the pattern I'm going to be using to sew up this fabric is the Mood Fabric Fleur, F-L-E-U-R robe. I have been wanting a linen robe for a really long time, and they're kind of hard to find, like 100% linen, and often if they're labeled linen robe, it's actually a blend. So I'm excited to have a 100% linen robe that's going to be incredibly soft and comfortable, and as I said, will just get softer and more comfortable with wash and wear. So that is the plan today. The Fleur robe is a free pattern to download off of the Mood Society website. If you are interested in sewing a robe for yourself and want to follow along, I will have the pattern linked below. If you're new here, my name's Rebecca, and I love making videos about sewing and knitting a handmade wardrobe. So if that is of interest to you, please do consider subscribing. And I'm gonna go ahead and jump into cutting out my pattern pieces and sewing up this robe. I think it's going to be a pretty straightforward sew, and hopefully at the end of this video I will have a very comfortable linen robe. Okay, so I have all of my pattern pieces cut out. It's actually a pretty efficient pattern design. The sleeves are cut on the fold, and the back and front pieces of the robe are actually one pattern piece, which is really nice. You only have to cut out the one piece. The back is cut on the fold, and then there's a line on the pattern piece that you would fold in, and then that makes the front piece. I did have to cut the belt in two pieces. You're supposed to do one piece, but it is quite long, so that's no big deal. I just cut a little bit extra, like I added 1 centimeter basically to each, so I would have a seam allowance, and it's not going to be a big deal because that seam will be enclosed within the belt. And yeah, other than that, I think I'm ready to get sewing. I did want to talk about sizing briefly. The majority of the patterns on Mood Society website, at least that I have seen, are fairly size inclusive. This robe pattern does go up to a size 30, so that's really great. And I think it is a unisex pattern, so you could make it for a man or a woman, and that's really great. It'd be a great gift project too, I think. And the size that I chose to cut out is the 8-10. I think my measurements are typically in like the 4-6 range, but I chose to go up a size because I want this to be a really loose and comfortable oversized fit. So yeah, everything's cut out and I'm ready to get started. Okay, so I'm starting by attaching the front pieces to the back at the shoulders. The pattern specifies a 1/2 inch seam allowance throughout, and it also says that if you're using a woven fabric, which linen is, so I am, it recommends doing French seams, and if you're using a knit fabric, something like a terry or a cotton jersey, it suggests overlocking the finishes for the seam allowance. So with a French seam, I'm starting with the front and the back pieces wrong sides together. I know that with linen, that's a little bit arbitrary and you can kind of pick which one you want to be the front or the right side. But if you were using a print or something where there was a really clear right and wrong side. I did want to note that these are wrong sides together, and I'm going to do kind of like a scant 1/4 inch seam, and then I will flip it around so that they're right sides together, which is how you would typically begin. So another 1/4 inch seam that will enclose that first one, and that'll be the French seam finish that I will use throughout the entire project. Okay, I've tried to position myself in a way where you can see the length. So I've got the front attached to the back at the shoulders and the side seams, and as you have seen me do, they're all French seams, so fully enclosed. And I just wanted to take a minute to comment on the length of this robe. So I am about 5'7", and granted, this is not hemmed, and with a straight hem like this, you can really do as deep of a hem as you want. I actually really like when there's like a 2 or 3 inch hem. I feel like it gives a nice weight to the bottom of a garment. But even if I were to hem this, let's say I turn it up like a 1/2 inch and then 2 or 3 inches, it is quite long. So even if I were to lose, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches, it's still like well below my knee, kind of mid-calf. So take that into consideration if you're making this for yourself or for someone else. I would say that the length initially is quite long, and that's fine. I do want a long robe, but I know a lot of people are different heights, so I just wanted to mention the length. Also, I wanted to mention that I have chosen to wait until probably hemming to attach the front pockets as well as the belt loops that sit at the waist. Because again, everyone's natural waist is at a different spot, and if I were to just follow where the pattern says, it might be too low or too high. Same thing with the patch pockets. Everyone's arms and hands are going to fall at a different spot. So I know a lot of patterns typically say to attach things like patch pockets early on, but in this case I'm going to wait so that the belt loops and the front pockets are exactly where I want them to be. So I am guessing now we're going to move on to attaching the sleeves as well as that front, what would they call it, a collar or neckband, I believe they may have called it, which will go from the bottom all the way around and down again. And that will nicely enclose this raw edge and give a bit more width at the front. And then, yeah, I'll probably hem before I do the belt loops, the belt, and the pockets. So here I have the neck band piece pinned all the way around from the bottom to the center back and all the way down to the other bottom. And I just wanted to show you again, just to give you a visual. I'm going to pin them right sides together with the piece that I have not pressed the seam allowance on. And then of course there will be a seam here that I can press to the inside. And then I will fold this piece down and top stitch it, and that will be the neckband. So the next step is to do the sleeves, and it says to French seam the sleeve as well. easy enough. What I'm thinking about is it might be difficult to French seam where the sleeve attaches to the robe. So that might be the one seam where I overlock or serge that seam, because I think once I do a French seam here, like on the inner arm, there's going to be quite a bit of bulk there that I think might be difficult to French seam around the sleeve head. And I'm also wondering if I have to like ease this in, that might be difficult to do with a French seam. So I think my plan is to use a French seam here and then serge where the arm attaches to the body, and then I'll just hem as directed. Okay, it's a little bit later in the day and I wanted to check in with you because I've been thinking about the sleeves and I think I'm going to shorten them or make the cuff deeper. So this arm right here, my left arm, has the original as pattern instructed cuff, which is to do a 1/2 inch fold twice. So a really narrow cuff. And I think it's just too long. It almost covers my entire hand. And this side, so my right arm, still long, but I have decided to do a 2 inch cuff. So I turned in initially that 1/2 inch and then I did 2. So you see that a little better. So it's still a long sleeve, but it doesn't feel like it's going to get in the way as much as this one. It's just way too long. So I think I made the right choice, and I'm going to go ahead and unpick this sleeve and do the same 2 inch cuff, and then I will move on to the pockets, the belt, and the belt loops, and then we'll be done.